Can you hear us, Tim?
I can, and I apologize for hanging up on your on the secretary.
Oh, she don't mind.
I thought I might have had a bad connection, so I wanted to make sure you guys didn't think I forgot.
Maybe to come up on the big screen there. Yeah, moving. How's John?
All right.
Rebellious. 3:06, we'll call the City of Yamhill Water Advisory Committee meeting to order. Get a roll call, please.
Phillips.
Ulrich present. Roland present.
John's here, Jensen's here.
Walker here.
Adam's here.
Hadeen here.
We have a full committee. We'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Kyle, anybody there?
Nope, just people here.
Nobody in the audience? With that, we'll move on to presentations. I'll turn it over to Jason, who can introduce Tim, and we'll give the floor to you.
Thanks. So this is Tim Tice with us today. He's representing OAWU. He's just going to go over kind of a water loss program and give us an overall view or kind of the foundation of how this works. Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Jason. Am I viewing somebody else's screen, or because it looks like I've got everybody down in a corner of my computer here. So hang on a second. I don't.
OAWU.
Oregon Association of Water Utilities.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's on his end.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try something real quick. See, somebody's moving a mouse on my computer screen.
Me?
Yeah.
Huh.
You sure?
I think we better call Ghostbusters. So if that's you, Adam, I'm good. I don't really think I need to share anything with you video wise. So boy, where do we begin with oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Yeah, I'm getting a message saying I'm viewing Kyle Adams' screen. So, okay, anyway. So where do we begin with management, conservation, and planning? Historically, it's only been around for about 30 years. Kind of from invisible approach, I guess is the best way to put it. The rule makers are being scrutinized a little bit about how water permits and water rights and certificates were doled out the previous half of last century, meaning they were kind of being dealt like playing cards, which is not on anybody's one particular shoulders of responsibility. It's just, that's how the system worked. But since about 2005, we've seen a good number of environmental groups kind of step forward and want to make sure the playing field is fair. And when I say it's fair, it's for the junior right users, the senior right users, and how do I say this? The fish. So the accountability on water use is becoming quite a bit more stringent. And that's when we've been talking with Jason for about the last 2 or 3 months about what you guys are doing for your management conservation plan. So to sum it up in a nutshell, your water rights are good. They're intact. I haven't gone through them thoroughly for extension of times and expiration dates or anything to that nature. But if we're going to look at the processes of possible system upgrades, meter change, replacement meters, some of the things that the city would normally do without any consideration of your water permits, certificates, or extensions, management and conservation now is going to be brought into the forefront of that planning. So what do I mean by that? Let's just say for grins and giggles, Yamhill needs extra additional storage, and you've got it in the works that you're going to put a 750,000 gallon reservoir in. In order to go for that particular loan, if you're going to fund it through loans, or if you're going to end up going after USDA money or Oregon infrastructure money, one of the requirements is that you have all your ducks in a row as far as the management and conservation of the water. How does that play into what you guys are currently doing? I have yet to see a water system have an unaccounted for water of less than 15%. And that is the goal by rule with the Oregon Water Resources Department. In order to get to that goal, obviously, Jason and the staff will have to do some additional tasks like leak detection, meter calibrations, public educational stuff. And that now ties into, if you need additional water, you have to prove up that you're managing and conserving the water to the best of your ability as far as the state is concerned. And it's the simple numbers associated with that is 15%. And then once you get to 15%, within a 5-year timeline, they're going to want to see the city down to a 10%, what we call unaccounted for water. That means every drop of water has some type of a measurability to it, from the calibration meters that are coming into the water treatment plant, to the meters going out of the treatment plant, to all the meters that are registering monthly water bills for the consumers, water calibration for fire hydrant testing, speculation on leak detection and leak repairs, meaning we found a leak that was approximately 8,000 gallons a month. We would tie all that in and see if we can get into the 10% single digit unaccounted for water. Any questions?
Tim, you and I discussed, as far as meter capturability, can you give them a rough idea as far as the numbers that we were talking about with the rollover, just so they have an understanding of that on the financial end?
On the financial end, one of the things that we really do discover quite quickly, not really so much on the management conservation side of it, but on a water rate study, is the capturability of meters. Meters like myself, I slow down the older I get. And if the meters are not reading accurately, they're going to be reading lower numbers than are actually transmissively going across their ports. Somebody who might be using 3,000 gallons a month, the meter might be reading 2,700 gallons a month. Another thing that we've discovered during water rates is what is the level of measurability. Some meters will register in gallons and we'll just stay with that. But the digit might be 1,000-gallon mark where if someone's used 3,700 gallons one particular month, that meter may only register 3,000 gallons. Now, the argument could be we can capture that on the next month, but to determine accountability month-to-month basis, you're going to need some pretty accurate meters. So one of the things we look at is having Jason and his crew try to determine what digit that those meters are reading. And this, you guys might be reading down to 100, you might be reading down to the 10 gallons. I'm not totally sure, but trying to discover that kind of stuff, putting an investment in meters. Pretty routinely, we see where a community's done a complete meter replacement program. It can get kind of expensive, but we start to see additional revenues of 6, 7, 8%. And that's pretty typical within the first year and a half of new registers on the meters.
Thanks, Tim. You have any questions?
So can he spit out a cost on if you're replacing your meters today, a regular meter like we have, that does the dial versus one you can read automatically? What is the difference in the cost on those meters?
Did you catch that, Tim?
Yeah, I did. Boy, that's a really hard question to answer because you have so many variabilities. I guess if you went with the Volkswagen model and they're just the simple digital read, where they got a mutating disc in there, what we call a mechanical device, I think you're probably looking at about $160. That might be a little bit low. If you get into the drive-by where they're automatically reading as the employee just simply drives down the street and collects data, you can get into the $350 per unit. They also have what they call fixed reading, where these readers are mounted on street lights and they're constantly reading the meters. They're really nice because you can kind of determine if someone's filling a swimming pool or a hot tub and just the additional gallonage from average. That's all put into the software. But I don't know what you guys currently are using or what year they are. Would you guys consider your meters as old? And does anybody happen to have an idea of what age or what year they were installed?
Well, they're old. Most of them are pretty old, but we are going to the Camstrap radio read is what we've been swapping out with and using from now on.
Okay.
So like 350 a pop.
Yeah. And they are kind of the Cadillac right now. There's other meters that are trying to catch up with them. But there's probably more Camstraps put in the state of Oregon than any other meter in the last few years. I last heard it was like 60,000 meters in the last 2.5 years. So it's a good brand. They got strong software. I think you'll see it's well worth the investment.
Tim, so you're saying, you're saying if we sign up for this program, as far as what you guys have contracted or possibly you're in contract with us, you're saying that will give us 8% more capturability in our system as a given?
Okay. What we have talked about working under contract, it's not a contract, it's just a project that we will develop your management conservation plan and set criteria that the city will adopt in efforts to be able to manage and conserve and understand how your water system is talking to you, because it's about the best way to put it. As it relates to 8% capturability, if you've got some pretty old meters and you go with the new Camstraps, I would bet you a soda pop that probably within 12, 16, 18 months, you're going to see approximately 6, 7, 8% additional revenues because the old meters are just not capturing that water flow past them anymore. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does, thanks, Tim.
So was a 20-year-old meter considered old?
Yes.
We got a lot older than that out there.
Yeah, we've replaced ours, but ours were probably at least 20.
in folks, when we're talking about a meter program, please don't forget the 3/4 inch regular single family residential small business meters. You can stick them in the ground. They're good. They're going to be calibrated. They're going to be guaranteed for X amount of years. The larger meters, the 3, 4, 6, 8 inch meters, if you have that size, I'm not sure, they need to be looked at on an annual basis. And then we have water source meters coming out of the river. We've got effluent meters coming out of the water treatment plant. All of these are kind of the balancing point for understanding the flows of water. So I don't want to just have all of us focus, when I said meters, just focus on the consumer meters. But we need to look at all the meters.
And the 2 meters at the reservoir are both brand new. Within
Oh,
a year
great.
old. But the one from the water plant, it's old and not very accurate.
That's the effluent from the water plant?
Yeah. It doesn't start capturing until it's about 100 gallons a minute. So whatever's coming out until it's above that flow, it's not capturing.
How often are you below 100 gallons? When it's not capturing?
Whenever the plant is not filling the reservoir. So when it's filling the reservoir, it's reading 400 gallons a minute going out, 440. When it's not filling the reservoir, it rarely reads anything. So any service from the plant to the reservoir, none of that's being,
The server, it's not
it's
registering
not
out.
registering out of the plant.
So does that mean when you're not filling the reservoir, you're still supplying water to the
To
system?
the outside user, everyone in between the plant, there's like 29 services around there that, and it doesn't read those.
So you're not getting a true number of what's leaving the plant.
Correct.
Has anybody ever compared monthly usage by the consumers versus monthly usage to the effluent meter from the treatment plant?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
That would probably be a very simple, quick review you can do internally, and you might kind of discover you're selling more water past the consumer meter than what the effluent plant is indicating. And if that's a pretty remarkable feat, that's a magic. If you can make more water than you're producing, sell more water than you're producing, I guess.
Well, they might be able to do that with their meter not reading correctly.
What are we looking at cost wise to have you guys do this leak detection program?
On the leak detection, it runs about $1,000 a day to have our Scott Berry, our operations guy, come out. Of course, I can't guarantee you, can't estimate how many days. That would be him coming out and visiting with Jason, sitting down and trying to determine where we think the weak areas are. Many community systems have areas that they just haven't done anything in that particular area, or they've been replacing meters in a particular area because they're just failing all of a sudden. So I would rather have Scott just come out and chat with Jason before we get into any agreement on the estimate of time. It's a time thing. I don't think I would care to say 5 days, 6 days. I just don't know.
So Tim, your proposals for a water management and conservation plan for the city, that's your recommendation for the next step for the city?
My recommendation is you're going to be required to have the management conservation plan. You've already been required. I think your deadline was back in 2014 or 2015. I had been talking with Rich about this for at least 3 or 4 years before he left. And for whatever reason, I don't know why it was not done. If the city is going to be looking at certain activities that it's going to be required to do just because you guys are looking to upgrade systems, your water system, you're going to be required to have the management conservation plan. And that is something that we will do for you. what we do there is we break down and take all the measurability of the system as it exists, and then we'll make the recommendations in that plan, which we think would be the best steps forward to have better accountability of your water. I mean, we may do the management conservation plan and find you have a 30% unaccounted for water. Doesn't mean it's lost, it's unaccounted for. So therefore, in those discoveries, we would come back and make some recommendations on how you need to get it to 15% and the timelines associated with it. These are rules that are being required by Water Resources, not by OAWU. It's not a suggestion or recommendation by us. These are just some of the things that we help out our membership with. The other thing I would probably recommend is looking at doing a formal water rate study. They kind of go hand in hand, even though they don't have to. You can do one year, follow up the second year with the other one. But we really start to kind of get down to the nitty gritty on a cost per unit, recommendations on contingency line items. How do you apply those contingencies for capital improvement projects, both long-term capital improvement, short-term? We might have to have a bunch of meetings on your asset management. You know, where do you think the weakest links of the water system are? And then try to incorporate that into a cost that's associated with not only what we would consider a long-term project where most community systems would go after alone, but what can the ratepayers, how do we adjust the rates so that some of these smaller projects that can be done on an annual basis to be able to keep that system operating optimally?
So we did have a rate study done in 2016,
Okay,
and it was largely driven, I mean, the capital improvement plan is so significant that there was no real way to adjust rates to fund the capital improvement plan. So we settled on what was kind of a happy medium for Yamhill County. You know, we looked at similar agencies in the county and balanced that with not putting too gross of a rate increase on the customers.
right. Was that last study done? Did that cover a period of time, or was it just this is what you need to get to and you're good to go?
Not sure I understand your question there.
Well, when people look at rates, every year there's a fluctuation in expenditures. And you either set your rates where you can match those fluctuations, or you start looking at ways that you can do annual adjustments. In what we try to present in a formal study is what you kind of need to get to. Hang on a second, guys. I'm getting a phone call. It's okay. It's just my wife. I can hang up on her anytime. Oh, she's calling back. Hang on a second. I'm in a Zoom meeting. Bye. She's very understanding. When you look at the fluctuations of expenditures, you can have a set expenditure, or you can have expenditures that are relatable to what your master plan would outline. What we try to do is, we're not an engineering firm, but we're kind of a boots on the ground association, where I could take a master plan for the city of Yamhill and I could lay it all out in front of Jason or whoever the experts are and say, okay, how do we devise this that we can make this acceptable, so we're meeting year after year after year implementation of what this master plan says. It's real easy for someone to come in, and we've done this before, where we say, we've been asked, how do we fund this master plan? And we say, you charge $178 a month for water. Of course, that's a joke, because pitchforks and shotguns would be marching down the middle of the streets if we said everybody's water rates are going to be $178 a month. But when we take the experience of the operator and say, how do we adjust these capital improvement plans so we can start knocking off some of the smaller ones. And then you have those smaller projects that are being able to be funded by your water rates. Those capital improvement plans fluctuate as far as price and the number of projects that we can do. As those projects become taken care of, then the following years, succeeding years, those projects kind of roll to the top of the list, and we can kind of prepare for that by doing regular routine adjustments to your rates. For most of us, it's easy to say, let's just put this figure here, and these are what the rates will be. And the problem with that is we have a tendency to kind of forget, and we blink twice, 4 or 5 years go by, and we wonder why the reserves are starting to fall down to nothing. And we kind of scratch our head and saying, what do we need to do to get back into operating in the black? Okay. A formal rate study through our association will kind of give you those guidelines that will say, here's your initial year. This is what you need to get to. Now, as a council, you may not like the numbers that we present to you. Therefore, the step around that would be, okay, let's take the next 2 years to get to where we have to be. And then from there, we look at that asset management planning, or Jason's recommendations to say, we need to do D, E, and F before we even look at A, B, C. They move that to the top. How are we going to fund that? What's the cost going to be? How does the rates pay for that? And the ratepayers are paying for it. The system's being kept at the highest level of efficiency, not sufficiency, but efficiency, in such a way that you're not going to have these big major failures where you're looking and saying, we've put 17 repair bands on this one particular block. We need $250,000 next year just to do between A Street and B Street on main line repairs.
Jason, have you seen a formal proposal on the water management conservation plan? Okay. That's something you can circulate to the committee here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tim, kind of in your thoughts, so we had a drought this year. We were in a water shortage for the city. We're limited on our source, which could be hopefully not next year, but anytime. We are looking at, our options. We know that there's no additional water rights where we're at. And so we're talking about looking at interties with, right now, kind of leaning towards the Hillsborough direction. So kind of your thoughts, if we move forward that route, we need to do this really, if we're going to look at any funding options, get this conservation plan in place.
So here's my first thought. In y'all don't know me, but I'm just going to be kind of straight to the point. I'd like to see the city stand on its own 2 feet. But having said that, there's a big push for regional water quality and quantity. Okay. Hence, Hillsborough's putting that 72-inch main line coming out your direction. I think it would be a great way to have supplemental water. Okay. But having said that, we have dealt with a good number, 3 actually, water districts that are surrounded the Portland area, and they are purchasing water from the Portland Water Bureau. And their water cost per unit is going up 4 times than what they currently are paying. So by the time we get to 2025, they will be paying 4 to 5 times more per unit of water than they currently are. That to me is pretty scary, because you lose control if you can manage your original source or the current source in such a way where peak summer months or the rivers start to die off a little bit, low flows and what have you, and you can have that intertie with Hillsborough or somebody closer. I don't know. I don't know the dynamics of it. I like the idea of redundancy, but it gets pretty expensive. I don't know if Hillsborough's looking to fund the entire thing with a contract through you guys. I don't know the dynamics behind the setup, but for the most part, if you can look at what your original source is, and let me give you a quick example here. The city of Aurora had contacted us to assist them in trying to determine a new 250,000 gallon reservoir that they needed to put online because they could not keep their first reservoir full during peak demand. So what we did is we came in and we did a little bit of leak detection, and we started a formal water rate study. And we coincided that with some field service where we were looking at their meters, okay? When we got done with the project, our recommendation to the mayor was, and council, of course, was they did not need a second reservoir. The reason they did not need a second reservoir is because they had a 57% water loss. And if they just went through and fixed the majority of those leaks, then the reservoir would probably remain full. And that's exactly what they did. Now, I don't know to the extent of their leaks that they've been fixing, but when you have an 8,000 gallon a day leak that some water systems have reported back to us, that's an awful lot of water. That can supply quite a few number of homes. So you almost have to kind of get in to the weeds a little bit as to system operations, take those hints that water system's telling you, determine if those hints are viable for accuracy, and then kind of move forward. And it's a waltz. It's a very slow dance in which you're going to figure this out, but yet the music's going to move you to another side of the room, and you got to make these kind of adjustments. And that's where I think if by diving into and looking at your system now, could you tell yourself Hillsborough's a really good supplemental, and we may need them through September or August and September only for supplemental water. But if you had a brand new system, I put you to sleep, you had a brand new system put in, you woke up tomorrow and you had less than a 5% water loss, your energy bills are coming down because you're not having to produce all this water, water quality is strong, water quantity is strong, then you'd have to ask yourself, do we want to go that far out on a limb and get into a contractual agreement with Hillsborough? Is it how I'm laying this all out, is it making sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jason?
He's answered.
John, anything?
Nothing else from me. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Okay. And Jason, is this going to be every other week that you want me to do this, or can I just pop in and pop out when you might need a question answered?
You guys think more of pop in, pop out?
Pop out,
Yeah,
I would say pop in, pop out, Tim, like you're saying, so.
Okay, just then if I get a link to be in here and I'm able to make it with our calendars, then I'll be on it, or I'll make a phone call to you and let you know I can't make it.
Okay, I appreciate that, Tim.
Okay. Folks, thanks for the fast 30 minutes. If you've got any questions, send them to Jason. He's got my email address. If we could best answer it by email, you'll get the answer really quick, or I'll just call him and explain, what we think's best for the city of Yamhill, and we'll move on from there. So other than that, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
So did you get a number from him on what it costs to do that leak
24,000.
24,000.
So Jason, was that for the leak detection or the water management conservation?
Water management conservation plan, not leak detection.
Okay. So that's,
So you're still not getting your leak detection.
But the thing like 10, no,
5 to 6.
that'd be $1,000 a day, he said roughly.
Yeah, so 6,
Detection.
5 to 6 days, so you're another 5 to 6, so you're
30,000.
30,000.
You know, the main thing is like we pointed out, is that we need that plan intact moving forward.
Sure.
Otherwise, when you go asking for a grant money, they're going, what have you been doing?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say leak detection becomes the first thing, because that's gonna have the most impact between now and next summer. The conservation plan, yeah, and water rate study, kind of before the horse before the cart, because we don't even know what it costs to make a gallon of water yet.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that.
Is the council considering an increase for the system development charges?
yeah, so we'll talk water rates first. So water rates will increase again in May by 17%.
May or July?
July,
July.
So July's water use.
1st of July.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
July 1.
And then here on after, it will be a 3% annual increase. That's what council adopted.
Okay, I've heard that one. And then 3%
Yeah,
after that.
Is it that mainly to cover the cost of the loans?
that 17% increase was to cover the loans, yes. That 3% is just to annually keep up to make sure that rates are keeping up with inflation. So we've got a similar with SDCs. SDCs increase with inflation every year, 3%.
Just to jump in there a little bit, you know, to speak to what Tim was saying is if we're agreeing that this subdivision is something that we can take on, I think we have to move forward with that, you know, water conservation and our leak detection to capture that 5% that John's saying that
Mhm.
is gonna be used by the new development. I just wanted us to kind of have that compiled.
Well, if you have leaks and you fix a couple of them, you've supplied your new housing development.
Exactly.
Whatever happened with the Spence, did they go ahead and move forward and agree to,
They agreed to the terms that Walt laid out.
I think we missed one opportunity there, delaying him for the legal costs that we incurred to address his issue.
Didn't they have legal costs on there?
Yeah, but
Legal and
Yes, they did.
engineering.
Legal and engineering, yeah, that's right.
I was getting down by then.
So just a question for your system, because I know I have I can kind of figure out where my leaks are at on our little system. So where do you have you have master meters along the way that you read when you're reading meters, or how do you come up with any kind of where your loss might be at, or can you?
And, you know, to speak honestly to that, we can't at this time. I mean, there's a section between, like, I think we spoke to this last meeting, there's a section between the water plant up to the reservoir that is kind of no man's land for us as far as knowing where those leaks are. And that's probably, in my opinion, is probably the most problematic.
And how many more expenses do you have on it?
I sure.
I mean,
hope
I'm
that was
just,
the-
you know,
Honestly, I
because-
sure hope that was the only one
The
because,
good old boy days when they put that line in,
yeah.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if you're not gonna have more of that.
Exactly.
or somebody tapped in.
Yeah,
You know, somebody used to be tapped in up there by the reservoirs. They
That-
found out when their house burned down and we still had water running out of the faucets.
You basically have 2 points, right? You've got the water leaving the treatment plant, which sounds like that meter's not functioning properly. And then you've got the water leaving the reservoirs.
Yes.
Those are the only 2 points where you know how much water is flowing through your system.
except for you have users in between there and there, so you don't have any, except they should have meters.
They have meters, yes.
So you should be able to count for,
Yeah, we're gonna count loss from.
Some of that, yeah, okay.
Household to household, yeah.
but after that point, you don't have any way to detect.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do these guys go about detecting leaks?
You know, I didn't ask him that, but
Are they gonna walk every foot of the line?
I honestly couldn't answer that. That's kind of like, you know,
Mhm.
that'd be my next question. And if we're wanted to move forward or look into this program, it's like, how do
I
you
think we
guys?
need to
operate?
look into it, but we probably need that detail
how they go, some idea.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But
Hey, we're paying $1,000 a day and they just go over here and they entirely ignore
Mhm.
over here where it's all leaking.
What are we looking at for replacing that meter at the treatment plant? So it's catching that
Yeah, did you guys get,
50 gallons a minute. It's
did you guys get a quote on that?
Yeah, you're losing a lot of water.
Well, I will say, I mean,
And it might be able to be recalibrated, because I know the previous person was messing with it and it's never worked since the same. But I wasn't here then, I don't know, but.
Couple of spare parts laying out on the ground.
any idea, John, what that,
I think they're a few $1,000s,
Yeah, I was
maybe
gonna-
$3,000. Were you talking like a 6-inch, 8-inch meter?
I think it's 8-inch,
Yeah,
so.
but it might be a 6-inch meter with an 8-inch.
8-inch fitting.
Was it
Well,
BJB? What was that?
that was the 2-inch one, or we just?
Yeah, the 2-inch. So the 2-inch was $1,200. So that kind of gives you a rough idea. So probably over 5 to 6.
Well, that was back in, because when they redid our bunker out there, new meters were put in and you paid for them, we didn't pay for them as a district, so. But they haven't been probably recalibrated since then. So I don't know how often, I know they were recalibrating ours, were districts meters every so often. I don't think it was once a year, but I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, there again, it just falls on operations, like gathering that information and knowing moving forward is like, okay, so we'll put that into our maintenance schedule.
Because our district's talked about whether we need to start looking at replacing some of our meters because they're not gonna run too fast, they're always gonna run too slow, so.
sounds to me like the first thing we need to do is replace that meter coming out of the plant.
Yeah.
That
I
needs-
agree.
I mean, that's something we could do, and then you could take the usage of the meters between there and the reservoir. And that would give you an idea if you've got any
Yeah.
major leaks between there and there, and
That's your uncharted territory out
I
there.
mean, that would give you,
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
So the way leak detection is physically done by walking over the pipe with a listening device.
Okay.
So it's pretty time consuming, and what Tim kind of hinted at this, what they would do is if you said, hey, we want a leak detection study, the first thing they would do is sit down with you and say, where do you think you're losing water? And if we didn't have an answer for that, then they say, well, where's the oldest piece of pipe in your system? And they just start going through it that way.
Mhm.
It's not, I wish there was a more precise way of getting to it, but that's why it becomes pretty costly. So I think you're right on the right page with looking at having a good meter at the plant. You'll have all your meters on that line, you'll have the meter at the reservoir, and you should be able to get good data to at least understand the magnitude of a potential leak up there.
Now, is there any place we can repurpose the meter that's being used that's not getting that less than 100 when you replace it with something else?
probably not, just due to the size of it.
Is it saleable?
Yeah, I mean, there again, OAW could put it on their website and sell it. They
I
do
mean,
things
a
like
way to get some of the money back.
Yeah.
Or repurpose it to get some.
It's not working for us, I don't know if they're good. I mean, they could probably rebuild it. but-
Yeah, I'd check first off to see if it can get calibrated.
Yeah,
It may be that, it's of a certain age and the vendor will just say, no, we're not gonna warranty that anymore. It doesn't have any value.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, yeah, recalibrating would be the cheapest type of thing.
honestly, we'll get right on it.
I think, I mean, that sounds to me like that's where they're gonna start. They're gonna come in and
Yeah.
say, well, your meter don't work.
How can you tell?
We gotta replace that, so why not save their time in telling us that and paying them for that, spend that money towards the meter? Because we know the meter does work.
So do we actually have meter calibration maintenance in our program? Do we have the capability?
If we contract it out. There's No, yeah.
Now money, we're already spending more money.
I personally, I think the money be better service just putting in a new meter, than calibrating.
Well, $350 a pop, 500 meters is gonna be $175,000.
Well, I mean, not
Yeah,
getting
it's
the
not-
You're not gonna
Cadillacs,
do them
but-
all in 1 year,
Yeah.
realistically.
Yeah, I mean, we've,
The new subdivision got all brand new cam straps and everything from the reservoir, when they redid the transmission line, that's all new to town. But then the ones we replaced throughout that year.
and even
You get a
current,
significant discount when you buy in bulk. We did a meter replacement program for the city of Cornelius a few years ago. And they were replacing 3,000 meters. And when it was all said and done, they were about $150 a meter. And that was for AMR meters.
Oh, that's for the reading ones, but you know.
Yep, drive-by meters.
I know the last water meter that I bought was not that number, but we're just buying the mechanical with the spare.
Was there any plan or budget for meter replacement each year?
not each year, well, actually, I'll say this, I think Bernie put more money in the budget for meter replacement and things. But there wasn't a plan, like an established plan, it was just a number that was thrown out, so. I think that's, for Kyle and I, or at least myself, it's like, now you have to look at this, it's like, how are we gonna plan and manage every year, because it's never been there before, so it's like, we're getting into the nuts and bolts of it again and saying, this is A and this is where we need to start, and so on and so forth to build.
Well, when you're done, you have to start over.
Yeah.
500 or so. Maybe take a couple months off in between.
Yeah, I think if for planning purposes, you're probably gonna get 10 years out of a meter.
Okay. Well, no, if you plan that, you can also start to figure that as part of your operating costs, which also then develops what you're paying for a gallon of water too. So you build it in ahead of time, so you're not having to scramble to find the money after the fact.
Yeah.
So are you getting where do you get your meters from?
Canstrip,
Where?
Canstrip,
Okay.
Or correct equipment.
correct equipment, I guess, yeah, that's
The
the brand.
dealership deals are from
I
them.
might get that info from you. We've been using Oregon meter.
Yeah, and West Young Hill, they just got at least 12 new
12.
meters and they're kind of swapping theirs out.
Yeah,
They started doing that in August or something because of all this and so you can talk to Tim, see if he likes them or
Mhm.
what.
That's when we standardized.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Well, that's what I might have to call. I don't know if it's Tim, but would take care of my district, but if they're listening, I have one spot I want them to, that spot I had you look at. I'd be curious if they can hear water running. But how do they deal with the water? Like we have farm fields, a lot of ours, and there's a tile line running underneath.
Yeah, that's the hard, that's why I was having a hard time even witching it. and
Yeah.
finding it.
And digging a hole, I think. is what we have to do. All right, that's my.
All right.
So do we need to make a recommendation, or are you guys gonna meet with this Tim and talk a little more about the leak detection, or where are we gonna leave that?
Well, I think our first recommendation is replace that meter,
Okay,
but sounds to me like that should have been done.
Does that have to be done in a motion or is that already
No.
part of normal business?
We'll just do a PO for it.
Just get a PO, yeah, get council.
We'll do our job.
I mean, that'll be the recommendation from us as
to start. with
the
leak-
start is get that, so we kind of. And then
That would, you guys could narrow down what you're losing in
Yeah.
that respect
from
from
that
that
section,
little section of line. Or that, not little, but that section of line.
and then probably the second recommendation needs to be this leak conservation
Yeah,
program, if we're gonna go for any funding. Sounds like,
We should look back and see if the master plan that went through in 2018 didn't cover that. It would be odd that it wouldn't have.
that's what I was saying, is, would there be any SDC funds that could be used for conservation?
Yeah, water management and conservation plans can be funded by SDCs,
How much?
100%.
100%? Is that 100% on a project? Really?
We would have to adopt it into the capital improvement plan, but those kind of studies typically fund 100% from SDCs.
Well, I think,
Well, listening to Tim and looking at the, almost looking at these grants we applied for. Sounds to me like this hazard mitigation, we better hope they don't accept our grant and we just drop that for right now until we get this conservation plan.
You know, I've generally seen water management conservation plans tied to requests through Oregon Water, water resources. So if you're trying to modify a water right, apply for a new water right, they would say no if you don't have a water management conservation plan. Funding is typically tied to having a master plan, which the city has. So I'll take it on my list to look to see if the city's master plan covers the water management conservation component. I would suggest that Jason and Kyle, you guys start compiling data for this water audit. Looking at how much water you're selling to customers and how much water you're recording through meters, and see, let's get a handle on what the water loss is right now.
Yeah, because if we're at a 20 or 30% loss and we can get it down to 15, that more than covers the subdivision.
What also demonstrates responsible management of your water, which it opens the door to other stuff, which, once we get further down here, we're,
Yeah.
Business Oregon with, a lot of federal money coming for water and sewer infrastructure, and I will be working with Business Oregon and Jody Christensen pursuing future funds.
Yeah.
so is there so you said something about the water rights. So is there an opportunity, or would there be an opportunity when you had some of these plans done that you could try to get a different water right or more water right, or are you limited on the fish?
That's funny. So John and I talked about this earlier in the week or latter part of last week, and I brought to John's attention about purchasing the senior water right user at the Turner Creek, but I mean, John can answer why he thinks that's not a plausible idea, because I was just thinking, why not buy all the water rights that we can on that creek
So you have senior users below.
below us?
I think you'd probably end up having to buy the property because the property owner is not gonna sell just the water rights because it makes their property worth more to have water rights.
Mhm.
And I've seen that in different cities that gone in and bought property because they wanted the water rights,
With the property.
but the owner is not just selling the water rights because it makes the whole value of the property.
Just hope like hell they don't sell it to a wine grower.
Well,
That's,
highly unlikely on Turner Creek.
you never know.
Yeah, well,
So we haven't ever used our fullest capability of the water right on Turner Creek.
as
It's
far as
been-
intake,
Correct, it's the physical amount of water that's in the creek, which
Yeah.
is less than the city is entitled to withdraw from the creek. So even times last summer, you could have drawn all the water that was, I mean, you literally, if you dam the creek at the treatment plant, took all the water, you still wouldn't have met your water right.
it's the lack of water in
It's
it.
the lack of
That's a
water.
good point, you know, I just
Yeah, okay.
get tired of creative.
What about, I know one time we were talking about even damming up, because we have that couple acres past the plant that we just timbered. Is there a way to block that so we can have more storage up that way during in the off season, and then release that more during the summer? Would that be anything?
So it's 60 acres the city has. It's about 1,000 feet upstream from the treatment plant, which is quite a bit closer than the 3 miles that the other impoundment is. We would never get a permit to put a dam across Turner Creek.
Mhm.
That just wouldn't happen. But the property's large enough, you could likely put an off-stream reservoir there, a pond, that could store water through the winter and supplement water during the summer months.
Like how?
So basically you divert this water into the pond, you'd hold it there until the summertime, and then you would release that water into the creek. Or pipe directly from that pond to the treatment plant.
Yeah.
And that was something we talked about back in August, and it was just a little bit too many unknowns for.
Sounds a lot like a dam.
It is, but I guess you're doing
It's
it,
another impoundment that's.
Yeah.
you're digging a hole in the ground next to it.
In no reality, how much water you can store
Yeah, I mean, we figured that
for the expense.
you'd have to store like 20 million gallons to get you through the month of August. And
That's a big storage.
it's a big volume of water. But I mean, it's not far off from what a lot of vineyards put in when you see them on there. It's not an unheard of amount of water storage.
So do we want to send a recommendation to council for conservation plan and look at the master plan and 100% fundable out of that? I know if you go by their grants, they've already overspent the SDC fund by 300,000. And they're hoping to recover that from the new subdivision, and I'm not. That's,
I'm hearing a lot of pushback about that.
and I mean, there's gonna be some pushback, but I don't like the idea of we're going for a grant, but we don't have the funding to match it. Why are we even going for it?
Yeah. Plus it uses up any SDC funds to use on any other projects, like your Ollie Street project won't happen if.
Well, it's not gonna happen anyway. They didn't put it in the county grant.
Oh,
No, she applied for the,
They left about $450,000 sitting on the table for the county grant.
Backwash.
Wasn't even applied for, so the Olive Street piece is out of it for now until we can come up with other funding. But it sounds to me like we gotta get the conservation plan to leak. I mean, that could be paved
Yeah.
big did events.
Maybe we
that-
are at 50% too, like
Yeah,
the other
exactly.
county.
I'll
Exactly.
say a year and a half, 2 years ago, we probably were at
We have another meeting before the next council
pretty
meeting.
high loss.
yes.
Yeah,
So we have a chance to come back, determine whether it's in the 2018 master plan or not before we
yeah, I
recommend
think,
spending any money.
so I think, John can have some answers for us and I mean, just listen to Tim, that it makes sense that we need to have that conservation plan and then if we can get the new meter put in, at least gives us a better idea. Sounds like they're gonna recommend the same thing when they
Oh, yeah.
come in to do their league, so why not be that much ahead and save $100 of their time and then having to tell us to put a meter in.
Yeah, the better data you can give them, and what I mean by that is meter reading from the plant, meter reading from the reservoirs, and accurate meter readings at the customers, the better information you're gonna get out of that management plan. Because if you give them a bunch of data that isn't accurate, they're gonna come up and say, well, you could do X, Y, and Z, but we don't know what's gonna happen. So I would pump the brakes on the water management conservation plan unless we find that that's a really significant restriction on funding. It has not been to date.
So stick with the leak detection.
I think leak detection would be a better use of funds at this time.
Was the first step. The next step would be the conservation plan if it's required, or if we don't have anything going.
Place.
So first meter, second leak.
One of the association.
I'm sort of lost by where they left $400,000 on the table.
They didn't apply.
Try to get more.
They only applied for backwash turbine and water filter media,
They being who?
the city. only submitted to the county arbor
We haven't
funds.
had it for so long that, yeah.
They requested $50,917.
So that would be our grant administrator.
Brian, wasn't that decision driven by the match requirement?
It was a match.
They had 50% match required. for
They have
construction
50.
project.
But my concern here is on this arbor funds, we applied for water filter media, but we budgeted that into this year's budget to buy those. There's $70,000 in this year's budget to buy water filter media.
Mhm.
And now we're asking for a grant. Most likely, they're gonna come back and say, no, you already budgeted for it. Why are you asking for grant money? They're gonna say, you already got the money. If they if they review,
So it was to do with matching funds is why they didn't go for more, is that what you're saying?
That was the message I heard. Because the pursuing $400-some thousand worth of grant meant the city had to come up with.
yeah, they got
$400,000.
it, because they have, state and tribal, which is the Whiten, or Berkeley Whiten's money, the 192. Saying I didn't realize there was a match to that. When that came out, there said there was 192,000. Now we're saying there's a $60,000 match to that. That was never put out when that. So we're only getting 132,000, and we've got to come up to 60.
No, it's 250,000 and the Fed's contributing 192.
Okay. So those numbers coming out or not. It'd be nice to see that all laid out. You know, it's 250, so that it's clear. I mean, it's kind of, they were getting 192,000, and then all of a sudden you come up and say, well, we got to have 25% match. And they're referring to that as the state and tribal. And down here, they're referring to it as the Ron Wyden's office is what they've been classifying that as. And so it sounds like two different funding sources. The email that came out from Yvette when they got it is Ron Wyden, we got 192,000.
Yeah, but it didn't say anything about the 60.
And it didn't say anything about $60,000 match. So we're not getting correct data back.
When does the new city guy take over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
City person.
And then we have the hazard mitigation, which is another 25% match on the technical assistance to evaluate the project for the seismic, for the reservoirs. Again, it boils down that they're speculating that they're gonna get that new subdivision and come up with 360,000 in SDCs to make up the difference that they're short. That new subdivision doesn't go in, you don't have 360,000, you don't have your match for all your grants.
Let's take out all of our SDCs, right? And then we went,
You wipe out all your SDCs and still wouldn't have enough. So there's just doing grants, you gotta be real careful on, you gotta have your match before you even go in for your grants. Because they'll look at your funding source. Feds do it all the time with the FEMA grants I write. I have to show where that match is coming from. And they will review my budget
Oh, really?
and look to make sure that I've got what I'm saying I've got.
But Brian, I don't think that we've gotten to the point where we've been able to formally apply for a lot of these. A lot of these are letters of interest.
And we shouldn't be putting in the letter of interest if we don't have the funding.
But I think the strategy was to cast I guess, a wide net with the uncertainty of who's going to partner with the city in funding these projects.
$300,000 unfunded matching is, that's huge. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see. But we're getting off track here.
Yep.
Let's get back on track.
You guys mind if we step back just for a little bit?
Sure.
So the water conservation plan, John, is the state's driving that. So for us to sidestep that and not put it in and try to go after it seems kind of. I mean, you kind of see what I'm saying? He's not saying like that's just driven by us, that's driven by the state. Saying that we need a
It's
water conservation plan in order to being, in compliance.
Sounds like we're about 6 years outdated.
yeah,
That's why I'm pushing this a little bit because
but I think we need to understand. It's odd that it wasn't addressed with the master plan, because it doesn't take a lot of effort to incorporate water management and conservation into a master plan. And so if it was a known issue in 2014, I'm not sure why it would have been missed in 2018.
well, like Tim said, he brought it up, but it was never, it was just pushed to the side.
You're gonna check the water master plan and see if it's in
Okay,
there. All right.
We'll check on that and we'll have an answer at our next meeting so that we can make a formal recommendation to the next council.
okay.
Let's go back to the old business, just the update on the log jam. The council did approve that to move forward. They're going to start the process to get that onto the CIP. So that, I don't know what all they need to do to get that there, but they approved that.
Do some hearings and stuff.
They also
Process.
approved to use SDCs for the 30% match. I think is what we can use out of there. They did approve that, which now is taking more out of the SDCs. And they approved that before we got down to the grant deal. And so now you're 350,000 in the 400,000 in the hole. So that was approved to move forward and to start doing the paperwork, permitting, whatever we need to do to be able to do that by July. Have that in place. There is a chance that the logs could be donated. So that might help with the cost a little bit.
Okay.
And there might be some other sources of maybe donations or in kind or something.
Couple more good rainstorms, they might just come down the creek to you.
Beavers might just help.
Just waiting for one of those night loggers up there.
They might just come floating down the stream.
That's great. Yeah, I'll,
So I don't know when our in streams in July normally.
July 15 to September 1.
So the thought was is July 15th, we could have everything sitting right there, ready to go. And drop them in.
And depending on the year, you can get an extension sometimes in September. We've done that Greenstream for Warehouser.
But the thought was is that way it would be in place for this summer.
Yeah.
That would help capture the impound water coming down.
That would also get us in compliance, so any other further projects come up that we.
We're in compliance and not out of compliance.
So who gets that started? Who does that?
Gonna be,
On the CIP and.
yeah, those councils got to move forward and get it on the CIP, but they should be getting direction to use.
Yeah, we could do the permitting on that. I'll just connect with Mayor Potter to get formal authorization to move forward on the work.
But that was approval of the council.
That's great.
Council meeting. So that project's being forward. We just have to try and identify the other 20%
Yeah, so they're not, right?
funding on there,
Stop the project.
and we'll have to get Public Works to maybe walk a little more and not burn so much fuel or something.
Weren't we gonna put a halt to the low jam and try to put that funding into the reservoir?
No. Log jam was the priority. What we voted on last meeting.
Yeah, but
I think there might be a different opinion from the Public Works group here on what the priorities
I
are.
thought we talked last week about putting that into the 5% for the storage reservoir. That's more of a priority than the log jam.
Yeah, it was brought to Kana's attention that they were saying that if we put that 5% into the reservoirs, that we could probably cover the reservoir upgrade.
The 3.5 million.
Is that? John was part of those
What
meetings
was
too.
the 5%?
I think it was all just built on the assumption that they were gonna get the money from the developer. Putting that money
Right.
towards that.
Right, I think that was the intent was if rather than divert current SDC funds to this logjam project, that current SDC funds plus whatever SDCs became available from the subdivision, if it happened, then you'd have enough money to fund your tank.
I think that's a violation of the council's orders they approved at the council meeting.
Which is
The
brought to
count-
our-
the
it was
count-
brought to our attention pretty late, so that's why. we were-
The council would have to go back and rescind their approval of the log jam and what they approved at council meeting.
Well, you're taking away the short-term fix that we were trying to put out there to the public by not doing the log jam.
Not really a fix, though.
Well, it is,
It's a
and it-
compliance issue, but it's not gonna, storage unit would be far more priority to me. And if they're not gonna fund it all, that's the only reason I agreed with it. If they're not gonna fund it, I would.
I don't know where you're gonna get the 3.5 million.
Well, if we put out 100,000 into something that's not, might as well hang on to that and save it for something more important. That's just my thought.
I think at the end of the day is kind of like, I don't know if it's even gonna be funded, so it's one of those things. It's,
Well, the other part of it is the compliance issue, as John had mentioned last meeting.
that's kind of the pushing.
Because if
drive
we,
behind it.
if we were in compliance, we'd be a lot freer to be able to get other things.
Even with the low flow last year, we weren't out of compliance. And I can work it to where we aren't out of compliance with it.
It'll be 14 inches.
You have to be 14 inches to draw 440 gallons a minute through the screen, yeah.
And I had it to where it never dropped below, because we were drawing 300 and never went below the 14 inches.
Right, you can control it's directly proportional, the amount of water flowing through the screen to the rate at which you're drawing it.
Well, at this point, I would say that council's already approved it. Council will have to go back and rescind.
It can still go on the CIP, can it? You don't have to rescind that for future.
Log jam.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
The council approved the log jam at their council meeting.
Yeah, I don't think it changes whether or not it goes on the CIP.
I'd say I don't know.
They voted to move it forward to the CIP and move forward to implement it by July of 2022. That was council approval. So now if they don't do that, they're not following what they approved. And if they divert that money to something else, then you're not, I think you could run into some issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I mean, at this point, to be changing any of that is kind of null and void. You need to start up, we need to look at other things. I think the log jam has been approved. It's moving forward and that's where it's at. Now, had the council not approved that or done something, it'd be a different story, but.
Well, I thought that was going under approval if they fund it, but if they're not gonna fund it, then we shouldn't move forward with that.
I think the reservoir is way out there a ways. $23.5 million.
A lot of money.
I think that's out there a ways.
So especially if you take that 3.5 million and start thinking about 5 miles of piping and.
See, I think the 5
anti-action.
miles of piping is more important, excuse me, than the reservoir. I think it's where the water is.
I mean, that,
Well, if we get the intertie in place and stabilize our water supply situation, it will buy us time to pursue a more robust and maybe the $3.5 million tank and put in something a little more significant than that even. I mean, I'm not saying that's not significant, just saying we buy time that will allow the city to do some more robust future planning. Because right now, running out of water is gonna be one of those things that gets people, as what do you say,
Yeah,
pitchforks in the streets?
Add any water to the creek though.
so the log jam's moving forward at this point, unless the council comes back and sends that.
Yeah.
And if they do, they might as well pack up and head for the hills, because I think public would be very irate. So I mean, talk to you about it and see, but that was the council's approval of direction, was move forward with the log jam.
And I don't know if we really want to backpedal away from something we already agreed to and promoted with them.
I
Yeah,
agree though, only if they paid for it, which they're not. I don't agree with it.
I think
Who's gonna pay for it?
yeah,
The developer.
the developer's not gonna pay $3.5 million.
Oh, no. It's not
He's
what I'm
talking about the
talking
log
about.
jam.
Talking about the
Well,
log jam.
log jam.
So now we're putting 100,000 out, well, we can
Yeah,
hold on to that and
The
put that to
attorney's the
something
one that
better.
put the kibosh on
Yeah,
that.
that was the attorney.
The attorney says you can't require that.
Yeah.
I don't know why you
No,
can't.
I get it, but they're not gonna fund it, so that was the only reason I agreed with doing it. If they're not funding it, I don't think we should put 100,000 of our own money into it.
I agree, but the
Yeah,
council already.
Well, it's not 100,000 of our own money.
well, I should have agreed to it under those terms, and if those terms are not allowed, then we shouldn't have agreed to it.
I think there's ways to negotiate.
He said we can't require them to do
Yeah.
that.
You can
That
ask.
doesn't mean we can't
Can't
ask and make
ask.
an offer.
Yeah. Right.
There's things you can do. Things you
Yeah.
can't do.
We're gonna have to come up with better, because if we're gonna backtrack every time we do something, then we don't, there's no point to have these meetings.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
I second that.
At this point, the log jam's moving forward and council approved it, so. Hopefully that gives you the green light and then we can get going. And like I said, I can work with you on the logs and possible donation. Sure. That way, you know, once we get a scope of work, what we need, there might be some other things that we can possibly come up with. to maybe lower that cost and maybe make up that 20% that we're looking for. You know, if we still use 30% of SDCs, which was $4,000, $30,000. You know, so we'll keep working on that. Anything else on the logjam funding? I think we killed that. We're still waiting on the operational cost to produce water. That's something we're gonna need even with the leak and conservation rate flows. It's kind of hard to say that it's gonna cost us more money to buy water from Hillsborough or McMinnville until we know what that cost is, so.
Or what the impact of the rates would be.
Yeah, so that's that's kind of a critical piece that we need to get, you know, as soon as we can do that. Because that's gonna kind of help us make decisions going forward. So I don't know where they're at on that, any idea?
I mean, we're just compiling all the data to get it going. Actually, I was gonna talk to you a little bit, John, after this to see. Help me out here.
So that update on grants, I mean, Sharon supplied what
Yeah, I read those.
they've done. I'm just a little disappointed that there wasn't more planning put into some of these grants and what we were doing and asking for a little more. I understand it was short term, short notice, but
Water under the bridge now.
if you're gonna be successful with these grants, you gotta take the time and do the planning and do the background work. And at least in what I've done in getting grants is, there's a lot of,
Well, I thought it'd be nice to have somebody to do it.
Well, maybe the new person that comes in the door will have after a while, have a different overview of.
it sounds like the gal coming in has some grant and done some grants for public works
Yeah.
and so maybe hopefully she has some understanding of how they work and
Because I would think that I see the grant, I understand the need for the reservoir, but somewhere along the line, the other part of that transmission line that's not been replaced, it's probably the oldest, is gonna have to come up in some form. I don't know exactly.
and I think that's, you know, our leak detection will help verify
Yeah,
potentially that. So if we can get that meter in place and then go to leak detection
mhm,
and stuff.
yeah.
Any questions on grants? I think it is what it is. And
Yeah. Onward.
we'll keep working away at it. We're gonna review the current water restrictions, and I know Rick has put some of this into Word, and I sent it out, and Paul's provided us with different things from different places, and Paul, you want to kind of describe what you,
Well, I have a new version. I see you put 2 on the packet.
well, one,
They're very close together.
I wondered if there was a difference, because I didn't lay them out side by side.
Yeah, well, I got a new one.
Okay, good.
It's not, there's not much change and all this is like from, this is the county water system in North Carolina. So it's taken from, and basically, I was just trying to find something that was more understandable and more guessable for everybody.
You saw on our current one, we're on 310 or 3.54.010. Line A or paragraph A, that superintendent after consultation with the mayor, if possible, may declare that a water usage must be curtailed. That's actually what's standing now.
it's in the, yeah, that's in the ordinance, so it does not have to go to council. If the way the ordinance reads now is if you guys,
I find it demon.
yeah, I mean, you gotta be able to justify it, but if it's, I think we get those trigger points added to that, then it makes it
Well,
easy.
it'll speed up your process.
Yeah, you don't have to wait 2 weeks to have a council meeting to,
Yeah, right.
I mean.
It's already written down, so you know.
Yeah, that's the ordinance, so, and that's, I knew that was in there, and I tried to explain that to some people, and they still thought I had to go to council, but
Mhm.
it's part of the ordinance. So, yeah, Paul,
So this one's got, this has got more stages, but paper, but actually is easier to understand because stage 1 is just like public notification of we're gonna have water problems. So stage 2 is voluntary. stage one is really how they label it here.
It's voluntary.
It's voluntary totally, and it just lists a bunch of things that you can do to save water. Which, in my opinion, most of this is voluntary, because I mean, if you look at our water use when you came out with any of the stages, it's all started immediately when people started saving water. So like stage one is all voluntary. It doesn't get to involve the police until like stage two, which is basically just reduces the water that you use outside. So, the way I changed it here was you can water whatever you want outside as long as you're using a handheld hose. And that's gonna reduce your water use outside a lot.
I like the idea that the other ordinance has a time frame, so you're not out there 100 degrees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You saw that a lot of people watering in the afternoon when it just
And
evaporates.
it just evaporates. They need to, that, whatever it was.
Well, it doesn't about, it doesn't make that much difference as far, especially if you're using a handheld hose, you're not spraying it up in the air. So, but if you want to change anything, that's fine. I just thought the whole thing about having watering on different days and watering times a day was something we didn't need to include. I think that's gonna decrease the water usage, but that's just my guess. So stage three, basically, you can't use water outside unless you're gonna serve pets, livestock, and other animals. And stage four is the council can do whatever else they want to.
I don't know if I like that portion.
Well, yeah, but what are you gonna do if you run out of water?
Well, that was kind of like in the current ordinance, level 4, it doesn't really say anything except other restrictions as identified by Public Works Superintendent or the fire chief. Well, by stage 3, you pretty much already locked everything down, but shut the valve off at the reservoir and say you're done.
Well, we can just eliminate stage four.
I mean, my thought, and I've talked to Jason a little bit, is maybe keeping a stage 4, but maybe spreading out the restrictions a little further between 1 and 4. We went into a 3 this year, which pretty much said no outside watering. A lot of concerns from people with gardens and stuff. Maybe a 3 is you can water your garden, between 6 and 10 in the evening. And do the odd even, and then maybe stage 4, if you really, if you get to that point in the game, then it's stage 4 is total shutdown of the outside.
Well, what I liked with some of the stuff in Paul's stuff is that there's actually at the beginning, it talks about the mechanics of determining at each stage. It actually spells out that you're looking at your water inflow and what's available rather than just, because we really didn't have any of that kind of stuff communicated other than the fact that we're running, water's way low, we need to restrict by X amount of gallons.
And I don't know, Kyle and Jason, you can kind of correct me, but if we put water intakes at each stage level, so 440 is our normal intake a day. If we drop down to, 400 or,
Well, wouldn't it be more predicated upon the flow of the stream?
well, and that's gonna affect your intake.
Right. But the most calculatable method isn't necessarily how much you can suck out, but how much is there to suck out. Like, if
And
we got down to a
we-
certain point,
And we've got the in-stream flow.
Yeah, Yeah, so we have, like Kathy said, better trigger points now that we'll know what the creek's actually doing to put this in stages.
So would that be something that maybe you and Kyle may come up with, or John?
Yeah.
What those inflow stream, so whatever,
But we will take that information and correlate it directly to producing water. So I tend to agree with the water production being the number that
the intake
would control that
Well, you can
the
then
water
take,
stage.
Well, yeah, but then you wait until the last minute.
Well, I mean, if you're, it's kind of gonna be a combination between the stream flow, and your stream flow is gonna affect what you could draw in. And then if you've got a,
Yeah, but it doesn't affect it right away, does it? I mean, because.
it's gotta be kind of a combination of usage and
Yeah.
so,
I mean, once, like, people were always, well, why didn't we start this shortage earlier? Well, once the water goes past,
It's
and
gone.
we got plenty, it ain't coming back around, and it's not like we can reuse it again, so once we're at a certain flow, then we initiate it rather than, it wouldn't have saved us anything if we started.
Start
before.
early. I mean, we'd be fine. That's what. I
But the
mean,
water's not gonna come back around and be able to use it again.
yeah,
let's kind of look at trigger point, because we were almost 24 hours a day plant running there
Yeah.
at one point. So if we, I mean, I guess we tried to get the plant back down to about 12 hours a day was,
Yeah, we had it down to
well,
10 on
you should
average.
Base it on how much the plant's gotta be running to fill up those.
and that could be the trigger
That's-
point.
that's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think that's
I agree.
more measurable item.
The trigger point is, so if our normal run time is
What, 12 hours?
10, 12 hours.
10, 12 hours. If we hit, what would you say stage one would be if we hit?
16 hours?
And is that at our full capacity?
Yeah,
I
because
see
your
what you're saying.
creek could be running at 500 gallons a minute, and you're pulling 400 gallons a minute, delivering it right to town. That all works, right? You're running your plant longer than you want to, but if the creek drops to 300, you can only draw so much out. And then you run your plant 18 hours a day, 24 hours a day, it wouldn't matter. So I think it really just comes to how much you can.
I mean, I don't even agree with writing it down, because then you're stuck with it.
Well, I was trying to make it easy for,
Well, I agree.
For someone to make
I
a
don't know if it should
call,
go
you
to compliance, but it should be
Just-
between us.
There you go.
Until they have-
Don't write it down.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it'd be nice that council and everybody understood that we do have
Yeah,
trigger
we can
points.
explain
Yeah.
our trigger points and why we're doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you drop
Don't
the,
handcuff us, basically.
if you drop to 400 gallons intake in 14-hour day or 16-hour day,
It's really once we started dropping, once we we're at like 360, that was when we were like, okay, we gotta do something. And then it was, you running 20 hours a day.
maybe what we do is go back and look at this summer's data.
And we just trust you guys.
That would be nice.
Well,
You're not part of the neighborhood association, are
So one of my comment on the voluntary
you?
guidelines,
They want to.
I'd like to see it say suggested voluntary guidelines or something, because you're gonna have these water police people that are gonna be running around looking at whatever.
Joe's over here watering his grass.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand the condition, the voluntary suggested or suggested voluntary.
Well, and then that lists the things out that you can do, whereas before it wasn't.
Yeah,
So, I mean, to me, that's the only benefit of that.
but I can hear some people saying, well, they're limiting how much water we can use to shave, and I can't flush my toilets, and
No, we're not.
I mean, I know, but that's what, you're gonna have that group, but that's what they're gonna do with it.
I mean, honestly, stage one is what people should be doing every day of their life.
I know,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a stage, it should be a normal,
It's not,
Stage one, this is normal.
yeah.
but we're gonna list it anyway type thing. I mean, I understand, but somewhere's, anyway, I see what you're saying, but
I think anything would work fine, personally. I think the community did a good job of reducing the water use, even with the stages that I can hardly understand anyway. So I don't know, I'm not too worried about it, but well.
Well, what if we,
Anything.
what if,
I think it'd be nice to be able to kind of message what's written in here is stage one, kind of message that to the community is, you know, just, hey, these are things that you can do to help
Mhm.
reduce water.
That's another
Shortage.
How do we gonna
And it's not an
convey?
act that someone's saying, hey,
Yeah.
you shall not.
or there can be actually kind of say, these are kind of suggested, ways to change how you use water to help.
That could go out with your water bill at the beginning of the summer, get everybody thinking about it before we actually ever get there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it
agree.
needs to
I
be.
agree with that. I mean,
Mhm.
water
that was
bill,
one thing even with Brian from, what we worked on was the communication. Always, everybody knows it was just a really lack of communication. If we can communicate early on, like giving this to these individuals.
But sending out the water bill isn't
What's-
probably enough.
No, I mean, send out what we're gonna
Oh,
do
yeah,
for ordinance, so it's ahead of time, and then, they're gonna have to be maybe and when you're sending out the ordinance recommendation to, I mean, most everybody looks at an internet somewhere, is looking at the city of Yamhill page, make that easier to find.
it'd almost be, the city would almost be better off to put in a Facebook page.
Yeah, Facebook.
I mean, as much as
I don't use Facebook.
I can tell you at the fire hall, I've heard my feet for a long time doing it. Once we've done it, and it's been up now for 4 years, whatever. We have a lot of followers. And it's very positive. And it all depends on how you create the atmosphere. I'm fortunate enough to have somebody that does very well at PIO stuff and educational, always different little things up there.
I think just use our website for that.
A lot of people don't like the city website.
It's really slow, I mean.
It's hard to
yeah,
find.
I don't like.
The organization of it is pretty,
Yeah,
in
the
other words, it's
communication-
pretty lame.
Maybe we can. improve that.
Communication for any of this needs to be improved dramatically, just getting it out to the community, because I mean, if you hand somebody a 3-page paper, they're gonna throw it in their fire and they're
Exactly.
not gonna take the time. I mean, everybody's busy, they're coming home from work, they're getting their kids, they're trying to do dinner, they're not gonna
Well,
sit
you
there.
can just send it out a stage at a time, which is what we did
Right,
last
make it more
time.
concise
But it
and-
needs to be some way to send it out where almost everybody can get it, other than.
But I think sending it out
City web-
before you get to this is a really good idea, so at least people can see it, but then it's figuring out a method to send it out when you start getting into these stages. So that it's more readily available, I guess, is how I would say.
Well, when I was suggesting, I was thinking single sheet of water conservation suggestions rather than the whole.
Yeah.
Either or works, but, just kind of start to make them aware that summer's here, let's be aware. So when shit hits the fan, it's not like, oh my God,
Yeah.
they start running up and down the streets, wringing their hands and beating the hell out of Facebook.
Yeah.
Pam Kirsch's page, man, the number of people who were carrying on about yellow toilets was pretty amazing.
Well, again,
That's just too much information. I'm sorry, come on.
Brown flush.
It's just definitely something we need to think about once we start getting closer, is the communication.
yeah, the
Getting it out there to
educational
everyone.
piece, and that's gonna be a big,
You got a lot of people that live in Yamhill but don't work here. I don't know how, if they don't have kids, they're not involved in the community, so they're not seen, or they're, and you know, they're not reading probably, you're right, the publications or whatever you put in their water bills, they probably are tossing it. I know I have the same thing for mine. I've sent out stuff in my water district stuff and someone will ask me a
Well-
question. I said, it was in your water bill.
But the
Yeah.
city has paperless water bills, so if it comes,
Oh,
and if you have auto pay set up have it set up in your bank that it pops into your bank and
you mean they don't look at their water bill at all?
you hit pay the bills and it,
I mean, I don't, so
but I mean, there's a lot of people that do that
there's, yeah.
they've got water, I guess,
We have paperless water.
they got paperless water bills.
Yeah, they send them out paperless, but you can't pay them over the internet or through your.
Oh, but you can't do your auto pay on,
You,
Through your bank.
you can set it up through your bank,
They'll pay it through your bank account.
the bank will, they're-
Bank will just send your money out. to
yeah.
They sure will. That's another thing is, yeah, not everybody gets an actual water bill. So other routes of getting the information out besides just your water bill.
Well, it seems like last year I got something on my phone or computer. It was like a local.
And that came out from the emergency management at the county. They can send out emergency messages but it doesn't get everybody.
You gotta sign up.
You gotta sign
Why
up.
don't I put in the bill, sign up so that you'll know what's going on?
You gotta sign up and get your number into that system and then they can send out for bills coming to an end tomorrow, you know. Enjoy the day, whatever.
there's gotta be some legal things for a Facebook page for a city or city.
There is certain things for government that you have to do. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, we've done it. I mean, you look around, the majority of cities and government entities are on a Facebook type account. Because one, it is quick and fast getting a message out. And normally the community group, they've got a lot of followers. I mean, people get in there and they get following now. Anytime somebody makes a comment, it goes to everybody.
And they did put out the levels, so that was nice.
Which page are you talking about?
I think it's one of the
Neighborhood association or Yamhill Town Community.
well, town and community
That one you don't have to pay to
get into.
get into.
But I think, you know, looking at using those types of medias, that's where everybody's at.
Yeah.
And it is a quick way to get messages out and you just restrict the comment section and there's a way to do that in the government side
Well,
of
and
things.
it seems like that their website maybe,
Not user friendly.
yeah, to find the water ordinances, you kind of got to know what you're looking for. I mean, I called Kim and say, hey, Kim, how do you find this, you know, without, so I didn't have to spend a lot of time going through it basically. So if there was a way to make, when you get to summer, to make your ordinances more on that first page you come to, instead of having to go up here and go down here and, you know, find it easier. People might read it, but not everybody does Facebook. I know that for a fact. There's quite a few people that don't, but, you know, if they were directed to, you know, keep it on city website, you know, or if you put things out to go check the website, it's fine, it's easier to find, I think, you'd get more use out of it.
Well, yeah, the city website were improved, that would be good, but I mean, like, who's gonna do that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
The new city administrator.
Well, they-
Did you guys use a message board or anything last summer when you?
I ran it across our LED reader board. They want to tear out.
In the high school.
Yeah.
The high school put it on theirs too.
Yeah,
I never go that direction, so.
I mean, we get a lot of people at the post office, so
Sure, it's a great place for a sign.
I mean, we assisted the city and put it on our reader board.
Yeah, well, that's great, but not everybody drives by there.
Not everybody. I get a lot of people that sit down there and just watch that thing.
All I can tell you is at 2 in the morning, it's a bright mother.
And I've got it,
I used to come by and check the mail on the way home at 2 in the morning and Jesus.
and that's running at 10%.
Yeah, well, I know it took me a little extra time to get to sleep when I got home because I was still winding down.
But the city lights are right behind it. It's not like it's the only light in that spot. I mean, there's street lights.
Topic, stay on topic.
Let's get.
I like the board anyway, but it just kind of, there were nights when I was ready to go home and go to bed.
It all depends on what's up there. The white light is,
I know the red's pretty bright too.
I-
Oh, well, I like, it's a nice board.
it's.
Another thing with this, I can't remember who told me, I think it might have been someone at OAW, but they said, do not tell people how to use gray water, that could get us in trouble.
Right.
That was another thing I was gonna bring up. From what I've been told, you cannot tell people to use gray water or
Gray water to flush the toilets. That's.
or
We just can't tell people how.
Oh.
how to use it.
Yeah, like that could get us in trouble. I don't know, I just overheard, someone told me that.
It's a liability
Yeah,
problem.
it's a DQ something, probably no more than I do.
Well, can you just suggest
You can't,
reuse of water,
you can't,
not mention gray water?
you can't. So that was something that came up during the summer, as people were putting out there, use your gray water to water your plants and do stuff, and
Standing in the shower.
You can do it, just we can't tell you to do it or how to use it.
yeah, from a government standpoint, you can't.
Okay.
Do we want to kind of review what Paul gave us and make notes, and then at our next meeting, finalize this, present to
Sure.
council? Because what council have to do is review it, then they have to hold a public hearing to update their ordinance. So it's a process to get this into.
Mhm.
We also want to make sure Jason's comfortable with what we're doing here.
Yeah,
Because
and-
he's, at per section .010, he's the guy.
Yeah.
But that's not in
Even
it.
Kyle.
Well, and what we'll do is we'll maybe make sure, I think we'll have to add the 3.54.010. That's the findings that you have to have for your ordinance, and then you put your levels. So that portion would be, and maybe, we can, everybody has time to really read through, look at it, and maybe come back with notes, and we can,
I mean, if you like this one better.
I mean, I like a lot of things in this. I think there's a couple things here that should probably be in there.
The thing it didn't address in here was the athletic.
That I
I did
think,
it on purpose.
yeah, I think we need to address that, because the school's gotta be, school was the biggest culprit.
Yeah, right.
I mean, at 25,000 gallons a day.
Yeah, and then they found a way around to a certain extent to water that field, they got, not.
But if we
The
can,
outside users helped chip in.
Mhm. And,
the outside users are filling up the tank and hauling it.
no, what Pfeiffer used to just pump out of the river,
Yeah,
that type of additional, and then some of it came from Gaston.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure they went over to Gaston.
Yeah, I know, they called me and wanted me to take our water tender and haul water. I go, that's not appropriate use for
Yeah,
fire truck.
It seems to me like we should try to rewrite the ordinance, make a complete ordinance to present that to city council.
That would be the goal our next meeting, everybody kind of review, bring their notes, and we'll sit here and
Well, we got plenty of meetings.
I'll bring it. And get Marcy to have it and do the typing, we can finalize it. That way we can present a finalized draft to council, at their next meeting so that they can take that and they can start the process to do the public hearing, to do the,
If they agree to.
if they agree to it. That way we can maybe get the trigger points kind of ironed down. Maybe we don't put the trigger points in here, but
I don't think I would put it then.
I would refer to a predetermined trigger point as that I did.
Referred to.
By
We'll
public
leave that up
works.
to operations and then.
well,
fine tune.
we could put in there reference operations trigger point manual, whatever. That way, if they need to change those trigger points anytime, it doesn't have to go back
If
through.
any significant improvements happen to the water system, the trigger point would change. If you specify the trigger points, every time you make an improvement or change the
Then you
variable.
gotta go back and change your ordinance. If you just reference per public works operational manual, whatever. That way, like I said, if you make changes, it's not,
Don't make
You have to
any
change your
sense,
ordinance every
don't
time.
they?
Exactly.
so.
So the statement in here about superintendent and after consultation with the mayor, if possible.
Where are you talking?
Not in yours, in the
In the current,
in the current ones.
I don't think that would be changed, would it?
no, you'd have to
No.
leave that in there.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that, so what happens, I'm gonna ask this question, what happens if the public work guys say we need to curtail and the mayor says, no, I don't think so? What happens?
Well, they can have a duel or something.
And he's got his hand on the control up there.
Well, I mean, because, I'm not saying you can put that in there, but you're gonna have to have the people that are educated in what they're doing, making,
Right, what's the mayor gonna do?
Yeah, that's-
He's gonna come to the public works person and say, what's the deal? You know, the mayor's gonna come to you for information. She doesn't know what's going on.
Actually, section B kind of covers that. Is after the superintendent / mayor's declaration, the city council shall examine the declaration and any control curtailment actions. The council may thereafter take whatever steps it deems necessary to address the water emergency, including continuation of the restrictions, limitations imposed by the superintendent or mayor, modifying them or eliminating them if the council finds that the emergency has been abated or eliminated.
so that's when you take it to the next council meeting and then
Yeah.
they would say, we don't agree with this, or we do.
So
or we
what
don't."
if, what if we change that a little bit instead of consult with, put superintendent or the mayor may declare that water usage is curtailed. That way, if your public works superintendent is gone, out of commission,
The mayor's on vacation.
or the mayor's gone, it gives either or the right to declare it. But then it comes before the next council meeting
To agree or
to
not.
ratify it or amend it.
That makes sense, because that way you're getting it done, you're done faster. You're getting your,
It happens now and not 2 weeks from now when, you know, we've been in a water crisis for 2
That's
weeks.
why it's
and-
good to have this stage zero. You can declare that it's stage zero, and then you got, well, I don't have to do anything, but I should watch out, and then stage one as well. I still don't have to do anything, but if I don't, then I'm gonna have to do something.
So stage zero gets people's eyes on the ball before there's actually a crisis.
and this year, the stage zero was voluntary, what they call it. Something that came out first,
Yeah, they fall-
and it only lasted for not even a week, and then we were, I mean, it was very short, nothing happened.
Well, I think
Nothing changed.
last year we started at level two, didn't we?
Yeah, what, for each-
Yeah, we started it too.
Well, once we actually went there, but there was that week or so of like, hey, everybody come back on your water. And then when we did have the emergency, nobody remembered that week. Like, what? Nobody said anything, no,
Well,
right in on the deep end.
so I wonder a percentage for like email addresses, does the city have the capability to kick out email to most of their users?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I think every county has
I
an
think
email.
everyone
attached
that
to it.
has the paperless billing.
Okay.
should
Well,
have-
then we could say, watch your email.
Well, they could, so you could send these
I think
out,
we're gonna add.
email.
like,
'Cause that's what I'm-
announcement on there or something. But I'd have to double check with Kim. on what
Yeah,
all
I'm just
our
curious,
capabilities.
because that'd be an easy way to get some information out to everybody, is to, through
I'll talk to Kim and find out
a
exactly what
email.
we're able to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that with my users, because I have maybe 15%, I'm not sure, 20 maybe, that I have email addresses for, so I do paperless billing, I should call it. Then the rest of them all want snail mail, but so I have to call those people when there's a water issue.
And maybe that's an educational piece, update your, if we can do that in the water, update
For my district, yeah.
your email or contact. Maybe, put in cell phones, so if you do text messages, there might be a way, a program that we could send a mass.
Blast.
We can make a contact list with everything else.
And that's what,
Well, the school uses flash alert.
Right.
Flash
I mean,
alert.
could we do that?
And that's something that the city can sign up for, is flash alert, so that you have the ability to send out. But then it's limited to those who have actually signed up for flash alert.
well, that's what I found for some of the communication, is that getting as you go on down the line to like the outside users or the other users that aren't getting a direct bill from, to how to keep that moving fastly, instead of, for our district, it's sitting there calling 20 people.
Yeah.
And most of them aren't home during the day, so you just leave a message. But anyways, I just, in my mind, for my district, and it would be a suggestion to the rest of the outside water districts, that they figure out some kind of a way to get a hold of their customers.
Well, that's another thing. Wouldn't the city in a situation like this be notified? So I don't know how this works. They notify you as
Mhm. So we have 33 users on our district, and Kim was I got the water loss, the first one, the same day the city Yamhill people did, and vice versa. Every time I
You have
left,
to send it out.
she sent it to me via email. So then I sent it out email to the ones I have email addresses for, and then the rest of them I had to call. And I called 3 times to all my customers.
Oh, cool.
And I did call them when the restrictions got
Can't
lifted.
you just ask your customers?
Huh?
Can't you ask your customers to refer to the city?
And I did, some of them, but, but that's just the communication of moving it out further, so everybody's knowing.
I think as we go along, as we get through some of the critical steps, we can look at educational, again, how do we get the message
How
out?
we get the message out.
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at this, if we can get this done next meetings, we got a draft to go to council. That way they can start, because there's gonna be, they gotta advertise it for a public hearing. You gotta have the public hearing. So you're 2-3 months out before they even get to adopt.
So is the public hearing separate from a city council meeting then?
No, it would be at the city council
Yeah,
meeting.
city council.
But so the council has to, one, decide to do it. Then they have to wait another 30 days. They gotta advertise that there'll be a public hearing on this ordinance. So that way, and then they have to put the draft ordinance out so everybody can read it. So if anybody doesn't like it, they can come and give their 2 cents worth. And then the council either adopts it or they don't.
2 hearings,
Or
2
amended
readings.
Yeah, there's 2 readings, so there's,
That's 2 months.
so there's 2 or 3 months process to get.
Mhm.
So as long as they could get it to them in January, that way they could have it adopted, hopefully, before summer.
Yeah,
I bet those are gonna be a couple lively meetings.
So,
well, in all reality, you're not changing, you're just changing some of the wording, the restrictions are gonna be kind of basically the same.
so if we can come back at our next meeting and they just concentrate on, I know we talked about getting with Hillsborough, but maybe that's
Let's get this one first.
let's get this done and then,
But if we get
Then maybe
more
we'll have a-
price for the meter and.
then maybe we'll have a little more information on the meter and look at that aspect.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have a follow-up on that at our next meeting, so maybe there's some recommendations to council, maybe we'll have some funding options.
Did you ever get any feedback from the mayor about those list of goals she had for us? That we
I
haven't
have
seen?
not got anything back, so
Just thought I'd bring that up again.
I will ask. Again,
And I like for the public, so we don't have this miscanoodle like we have with the log jam. You guys need to make sure that you're up with the ordinances that we're talking about here,
Yeah,
so that you're in 100% agreement on.
yeah.
If you have
I
some
agree.
suggestions, make sure you're making
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
You know, because I think as a group, if we, you
I,
know, it's open to whatever, we just need to come up with a way to say it.
I think if there's something that's agreed upon, nothing, no changes without coming before the group and going out, because I think if city starts changing something that the water advisory was put in place to make recommendations, and then the council approved those recommendations, and then all of a sudden we've got a change over here, I'm sorry, I think you just slit your throat. And
Well, another thing would just be to not change it, leave it like it is.
No, I think we need to update the ordinance. I don't think there's an issue with
Yeah.
that. It's just making sure that
whatever.
what Public Works you guys are gonna have to deal with it. You're the ones that are gonna have to say, this is the ordinance, and
Yeah, but we're not
And-
changing
Yeah,
that.
you're 100% right, Kathy. Like,
so I think that you guys need to be on board 100% with whatever the ordinances are gonna be. So that we don't, you know, so you're not,
stumbling through paperwork.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm not having,
So you don't have pitchforks and shotguns coming down the street at you.
well, that's, and it's still and I don't know where to bring that conversation up, but the outside water user versus the inside water users is the homeowners group is a what home neighborhood
Gam Hill Neighborhood Association.
is not going to let that drop out at some point. I mean, so I don't even know how you talk about it or address it. I mean, I don't know where it's at.
Well, and I think again, it comes back to our cost for water, what it costs to make.
Mhm.
And we need to educate them without the outside users to help pay for this. And I mean, we probably figure out those numbers once we get that cost of water. If you
Sure.
dropped all the outside users off, what your cost would be for water in the city, because your electrical, your maintenance, your upkeep,
You're still gonna have staff people to deal with that.
staff people, yeah, maybe your plant doesn't run as much, you don't go through so many chemicals, but you still have that plant cost, the pipeline cost.
There are gonna be certain costs that will not change, whether it's everybody or just the city.
Your transmission lines are gonna cost the same regardless.
So instead of,
We'll get some robots.
it's like the 17% for the transmission line, if you eliminate the outside user, because they're having to pay for that. Well, now maybe your cost goes up 30% instead of 17.
I think it'd be a lot worse than that.
Yeah, it's probably.
I mean,
And
they're
somehow-
by volume using 50% of the water.
So,
I mean, that's 50% of the city's revenue.
so
I
you're,
can't imagine when outside users.
So somehow those numbers need to come into play to the public. And I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't have that. I don't know that, but I'm just saying, because these guys keep spitting this out, we need to kick out the water, outside water districts. Well, we're gonna look for another source if there's one out there, because if you guys shut us off when we need the water the most, we're not gonna continue to pay for it the rest of the year. I mean, we're gonna have to figure out, I don't know how you're gonna do it.
and like I said, if it goes up, we need to educate them that without those, your water bill is gonna double.
It could do this,
It's
because
There's a lot of couldas, but without the baseline we have.
Baseline.
It's just
yeah,
conjecture.
so that's, because you talk to some of these, I said something about, what do you think you're gonna do without the income from the outside water users? And they're not thinking about that part.
Yeah, they're not thinking that,
Still got all these improvements that we wanna do.
Yeah.
The they're helping to pay for.
And have
They don't
helped to pay for it for the last
we're
20
gonna-
years.
More than that, we've been paying since 40 some years. I mean, in fact, one of the letters, and I gotta go back and find it again, and I was reviewing the last time I was reviewing history on our district, and it said there was almost I think it was 100 less city, outside users versus city users when they first started doing this. Because there was almost equal. And then the city has grown, so now they've got more water usage, but anyway, because when it first started.
Well,
So we need to ask him for a report on revenue by customer today.
Yeah, something like that. Because I know there's different customers, because, you know, you got the districts and then you got the individual people, I guess, that are hooked onto your transmission line.
Yeah. So I mean, that's,
it'd be a cold day for me to ever vote to cut off my neighbors just because they don't live in town.
yeah,
I can't say that.
That's another thing. I totally agree.
We already don't allow new outside users, so.
No, we haven't for
So-
years. That's probably, we came on and. Yeah, since we came on there shortly after that, they cut it back off again. And believe me, I could have a list of 10 people right now on Lawford Road that want city water.
well, if we had a better water source and better stuff, maybe that's something
I
that
mean, if we had water from Hillsborough,
you could,
you could expand.
you could expand that and you have more people help pay for that infrastructure.
There's a lot, there's a lot to do with that expansion. I mean, you're talking new water lines throughout all your outside water
Yeah.
districts. And I mean, it's a lot, but gosh, down Laughlin Road, we have 3 or 4 people that call water every day.
Yeah,
This was
You
taken
bring in
like
more
a county.
people, water makes their
So.
costs go up because there's kind of more of
Yeah.
it, using more of it.
well, let's get back at our next meeting and we'll fine tune and come up with a draft ordinance to submit to council.
That's,
And you
That's our
guys will
number.
have info on the meter and
Yeah.
that stuff. We'll concentrate on that the next meeting.
ordinance is our #1 priority for next meeting.
That's primarily what we'll work on. And we'll get an update on.
So do you have time? I mean, you guys have time to put it on your version of ordinances? I mean, versus what we've done here and what you have?
We could carve some time out to work together and,
I mean,
yeah,
you know, because that's my concern is that we're just, you know, these are all looking great, but you guys are the ones that are gonna have to figure out how to enforce that
Yeah,
at
sure.
some point or whoever's. So, like, my opinion, I'd like to make sure you guys are comfortable with what we do.
I appreciate that, Kathy. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
start doing our homework there and digging into
Yeah,
it.
we don't want people stacking up outside the outpost waiting to jump you on your way.
Are we meeting on the 28th?
yeah. Anything else we need? I guess I gotta call for public comment once more. Anybody there, Kyle?
One person and no hand.
Public comment going once, going twice? Sold. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Wasn't sure whether that one needed one or not, but.
We are adjourned at 5:13. Thank you, everybody.